who are the providers, and so on. My first couple of years was really an education for me as to why that slogan was wrong. And look, you can get improvements in education by hitting the system hard. You know, we did this, for example, when we improved literacy and numeracy for 11-year-olds. We put in targets, we told the schools they had to get them, we monitored them, beat them over the head if they weren't doing them. And in the end, it only has a limited effect. Because, by the way, you stop beating them and stop doing it. So I then came to the view that we had to experiment with different forms of education provision. And so we then started new types of school, some of them very similar to what the Americans do with charter schools, and the Swedish did with their public-private partnerships. We introduced academy schools in the UK. They were fantastically controversial. People fought very hard not to have them. They're now, by the way, a mainstream part of the new government's program. And we ended up incentivizing teachers, rewarding those that did well, saying to those that couldn't teach it was maybe better they got out of teaching. The teachers' unions did not like this at all. But in the end, I became absolutely convinced that reform was about much more than just issuing targets and spending money. And so, you know, my advice now to anyone doing education reform is look at the evidence around the world as to what works and what doesn't, and start to introduce, at least in parts of your system, schools that work and operate differently. Because in the end, I mean, this is a really interesting example of change. By introducing these first academy schools in the UK, and we introduced them in the worst places, right? So the worst schools where only 10% of the kids were getting a decent exam result. So we brought in a public-private partnership into these schools. We took them out of the hands of local government. We said, we're going to allow you to operate more freely. We brought in different types of people to come into those schools. And we gave them a sense that they had their own ethos, their own purpose. The results have been remarkable. So I just think with schooling particularly, you know, there'll be lots of different ways of doing this. But do look around the world at what's happening, because there are exciting things happening all over in education. By the way, really exciting things happening in technology and education. I mean, I cannot think that we should educate our children in a traditional way when there is not a single one of us that now get our learning and information and knowledge in a traditional way. We've got the internet. You know, we've got huge ability to access the very best. So we should be thinking creatively and imaginatively about this. And it brings me just one final point on this. I think the big challenge for political leaders in local government as much as national government is to encourage the public services to be innovative and creative. And very often, the easiest way in the public service, because the political leaders are so risk-averse, the easiest way is you just do it as it's always been done. You know, and provided you don't make any waves and no one's, you know, upset, you just carry on managing the system. And I used to say sometimes to my civil servants, guys, stop giving me 1,000 reasons for not doing something. Just give me one reason for doing something. Otherwise, the system, you know, I used to say the problem with the system is not a conspiracy for right or for left. The problem is it's a conspiracy for inertia. So how we as political leaders empower empower creative, enterprising public servants. I think that's a big, big challenge. There's no better place to apply that principle than education.
Do you believe that variable pay is one way to also incentive public servants to do better and so we can discriminate the best performing from the variable pay, so that they have some part of the wage that is set and some is conditioned to target GI?
No, I think we should be again very imaginative about